Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring some new products from Pink Fresh Studio. I am using the Print Shop Modern Botanicals, the Always Smiling set, and then these dotted fancy frames. Love these. We'll circle back around. So I am going to use the Always Smiling to create some texture in the background. And all I'm going to use it for, I picked this one because it's a nice size stamp. And basically it's going to fill up a lot of that background, but I'm just going to do a white on white heat embossing. So that way it stays in the background versus competing with my focal point. This video is part of a blog hop for their new release. So there is a giveaway. You guys do have to head over to the blog to be entered, and that will be linked below if you're watching on YouTube. And they're doing 10 $25 gift cards, and they will pick among the commenters, and then they will announce the winner on October 16th. So make sure you hop over there and leave your comment there for your chance to win. And then there's also the link to the rest of the hop, which includes lots of talented designers, including Dawn. So, and if you've watched my channel before, Dawn Wolfslagel is my crafty BFF. She's endlessly talented, and I love her cards for this release. So make sure you get over there to see that. She's using a lot of my boyfriend. My blue is my boyfriend. So anywho, we are just doing the white heat embossing, right? Yeah, we talked about that. So, and then for the actual card, we're using that Modern Print Botanicals. And if you're not familiar with Pink Fresh's, I guess what's the word that I want? The kind of like the system, I guess, this like the system that they follow for all of their releases. I shouldn't say all, but for most of their releases is they typically do what they call a suite. So when you have like your stamp here for the Always Smiling or for the Modern Botanicals, there's a stamp, there's a coordinating die, there's typically stencils, and it used to be a hot foil plate, but now that the press plate is on the market and you can still foil with press plates, I think they're switching over to really just doing press plates with their suite. You don't need all of them, but they do all work together if you want to use them together. And the reason that I bring this up is because we're specifically going to be using the stencils today. So here's my background. It's just that white on white. For the stamping, I am going to use my Misty, but I have to take the foam out because this particular stamp is a red rubber stamp, and that means it has the foam built into it, so I don't need that foam insert. And then here is my first tip for getting a really easy no line coloring look. And that is to stamp your stamp, or if you're using a better press plate and you want a no line look, your better press plate in a light ink, but not just any light ink, a light ink that will work with your color combination. So for this one, my color combination is a yellow, a pink, and a green. I have the green, obviously, in the foliage, and then the flowers will be yellow or pink. Now, in my case, I could have gone either or, but I thought that the pink would be better. But you have to make sure, like, we wouldn't want to stamp these in like a light purple, because then it's not going to blend. It's not going to blend in when we do the stenciling to achieve that no line look that we're going for. But because the pink is a natural complementary color to a yellow green, even though we've stamped the leaves in pink, they will still blend in there with the green. It'll just be like a little bit darker, because if you mix them together, you would get brown. But since we've used such a light ink, it will work. So originally I started by going in with the 1/2-inch brush. And if you want to add detail color, that's a great idea to use those. But recently Pink Fresh came out with these bigger brushes. They're 1 inch, they're flat on the top. And they're great. They're fantastic for putting down a lot of color in a limited amount of time. So since all of my leaves are going to have this green, I think the one that I started with was, I think it's grassy knoll. And then I shaded it with olive, I think. These are all the colors that I have from Pink Fresh are in the ink cubes, and that's just because it gives me kind of more bang for my buck. It gives me more colors for the money that I have spent, and I haven't run into an issue where like they didn't work well for something. So using these smaller brushes, either the 1/2 inch or the 1/4 inch, is definitely a great way to add further shading. Now, you don't have to, since we're going to be, quote unquote, coloring them. Over top of this ink blending. The ink blending with the stencils is basically just going to give us a base. Now you're welcome to go in there with multiple colors, and then it will limit the amount of shading that you have to do. So if you're less confident with your markers, or if you have less color options with your markers, maybe, go add more shading with your inks. But adding the markers, period, I think is just a crisper way to do it. You could also use colored pencils if you don't love markers. So for the pinks, I added my lighter pink, and then again, I'm using the smaller blending brush to add the darker shading to them. Some of these are really small, so I'm not, going overboard with adding shading to them, knowing that I will be using my markers. So if it's a small area with a little bit of real estate, don't feel like you have to shade it with another color. You can just put down one color and then worry about adding your shading with whatever medium you choose. So that's the second one. And then for the third stencil, I'm going to do it like 1/2 and 1/2. So for some of them, like this one, can you see in the bottom left, the bigger one in the bottom left? That's the first one that I think I end up coloring. And the second layer is just the, like the other side of the flower, because it's a side view, so it's an other side of the flower. And it's the same thing for some of like the bell portion of the flowers that hang down. So I do want to go in and make sure that those stay pink, because it's the same flower. So those I went in first, but I do want to add yellow to some of my centers and yellow to some of my outside petals. If you are doing that, the smaller blending brushes will make it easiest, but also remember to please, please, please clean your stencil, because I don't want to pick up any of that pink with my yellow. And now all of a sudden I have one flower that's a bit more orange and they don't match. Or maybe that wouldn't bother you. I don't know. I'm super matchy-matchy. But anyway, I am going to do the same thing for these yellows. I'm going to use a lighter color, which I believe is the Lemon Whip, I think is what it's called. And then the shading color is Sweet Mustard. And so I'm just going to, do those. And for this one, there's only 3 stencils. So this is going to finish off the flowers for the ink blending portion. And it's not that they're not pretty with just the stenciling. They are. And if that's like, you're like, I have no desire to add any extra to them, I'm perfectly happy with them being ink blended, then that's great. Everybody has a different style and there's nothing wrong with that. I just like to add a little bit more dimension to them. One thing to note, and I did use a colored pencil for this versus a marker. You could use a marker, but when we're doing the stenciling, it does not stencil the stems, because that's done with the stamp or the press plate. So I am going back in with a colored pencil. I just sharpened it, made sure it was a real sharp point, and then I just went in there and just followed right over those lines. If you're worried about that, or you don't have the dexterity to maybe add the lines back in, you could try stamping it with a very light green ink. And then, just kind of doing what you need to do with the markers or colored pencils to get that to blend. So here I'm going to line up my die cut, like my die to make my die cuts, and then I'm going to tape that in place and I'm going to go ahead and run that through. Then once I have them all cut out, I do have some more die cutting that I need to do, but basically I'm going to set these aside before we add the dimension to finish out the rest of my die cutting. That dotted fancy frame that you saw in the beginning, I'm a big fan of these. And I don't mean specifically just these. See how that has like a regular die and then an inset to create a frame? So you can cut it with the detail as one large piece, or you can cut it like I did to be a frame. And Pink Fresh has a lot of these styles, like these different nested, for the lack of a better term, like nested shapes. And they can be more expensive. I'm going to not cut the frame, just the large piece out of this piece of vellum as well, so that it gives me somewhere for the eye to rest. And then we're going to work on the shading. I showed you 3 colors. I didn't use 3 colors. It's because I hadn't done it before and I wasn't entirely sure what I needed. And the reality of it is, I was pretty good with just the darker color, and I maybe used a little bit of the mid-tone, but I definitely didn't use the lighter color. I just wasn't necessary. So I just went in and added a little shading from the base of the leaf, more towards the outside, just did a little flick of color there, and anywhere where I needed to fill in the stem that maybe I had missed, I also did it with the marker. So anyway, back to these other pieces, these nested pieces. They can be a little bit more expensive, but they are so versatile and you can use them over and over again. They are probably like in my top 5 investments for card making. Those are really great kind of foundational pieces that aren't a trend. They, you know what I mean? They're always going to be something that's like a classic that you can go back to and continually use. Big fan of those. So for the shading for the flowers, after seeing what I used with the greens, I knew I was only going to need like 2 colors for the shading. And so this is very much a no line look, as you can see, but we're starting to really get that dimension by just adding some of the darker colors, because in order to have the dimension, we have to have that contrast. But especially with no line coloring, that contrast is really scary, right? Because we have no idea what we're doing and it starts to kind of look blobby and you lose your detail. And it's just like, I don't know if I want to risk ruining it. But when you have the color already stenciled down, it's a lot easier to add the shading to it, because, it kind of gets you over that like blank white page, kind of creative block you might have, because there's already color down and we're just adding to it. And then, of course, I've said this before in my videos, we want to add shadows any point the 2 places meet or where one object lays on top of the other. So like here for these cupped flowers, this on the back side, that's where we're going to add the majority of the shading. And then on the front of the piece that we can see all of, we're just going to add it kind of more towards the bottom edge, so that we have a nice dark shadow where it looks like it's cupped, and then a nice light highlight on the edge so it looks like it's sitting in front of it. And again, I just used these 2 colors. The stencil color is acting as my base color. So, these were really like quick and easy to do, and I wasn't as scared as I normally am when it comes to no line coloring. And the reason that I share this with you, obviously I hope it's helpful for you, but if you're a person who is a big fan of Pink Fresh, they're one of the companies, because they do those suites, that they almost always have stencils with their images. So if you really love no line coloring, this is a way that you can pretty much use whatever they have and get a no line coloring look without having to be brave enough to just go in there with no map. So for these ones, they look more kind of like a daisy or a cone flower style. I'm just adding a little bit of darkness from the center of the flower where all the petals would meet. It would be darker, so just kind of flicking out from there and then blending that out with that mid-tone. Again, not completely covering everything, leaving the base color as my highlight color so that they still look like they have, you know, plenty of dimension. So yeah, other things. I did tell you guys yesterday in my video that we would be having a story time soon, and we definitely will be, because there's just some general things that I would like to touch base with you guys. You know, we've been on this journey together for a long, long time, and I know a lot of you have been with me since the very beginning. So just going forward, as I figure out what's going to work for me and what's going to work for my family amongst all of the other things that are happening. I do appreciate your guys' feedback with that, just so we can, you know, kind of make the best decision going forward. Here, I am stamping the sentiment. This is from the Always Smiling set, and it says, "You made my day." I did originally stamp it in green, but then once I kind of did my mock-up of like laying everything out, it was too much green. And which is honestly kind of shocking because I really like green. It's I think I told you guys that, like, my poor mother does not like green, and then I chose it for my bedroom carpet color, which she still has. So, and then I cut out a couple of more just so that they would have some height to it. You can see in the background, do you see how that background has color on it? And I told you we were just doing a white on white. Originally, I tried it with adding some color behind it, and you will get to see both versions because I think it's important to be transparent and let you guys know what I tried and not just showed you the finished product that I'm happy with. To me, it was distracting away from the focal point with the color underneath. I tried to soften it with the vellum. But that was still, it was like a little too much even still. So that's why I switched to just the white that's going to offer that texture and that interest, but is not going to detract away from the flowers. For the vellum, any adhesive that you put on vellum is going to show through. So what I did was I added my frame to the outside edge of the vellum. And then in order to lift it, I am going to kind of trap it between the frame pieces. So I ended up doing, I think, 3 of the frame pieces, but the vellum is caught or trapped in between the first and the second piece. So that way, when I put it on, it has, you know, I think it's 2, maybe 3 pieces in between. But see here, you can see it does soften that color a little bit, but just not enough. So here I stamped it in the pink. This is the one that I ended up going with for the actual card. And I think this is raspberry. I think it's the darkest one in that pink ink cube pack. I think it's raspberry. And I'm just going to glue it right over that green. I'm just going to use that green as another layer, and I'm going to glue it right over top of it so I don't have to cut all those extras again. And you can see in the background, I kind of have my layout already of how I want it to look. More of a diagonal design with the flowers coming in from the right and the left. Here's those, so it was 3. Here's those extras that I cut. I'm not going to add those until after I glue down my flowers. I know my flowers are going to get glued flat to my vellum, so I'm going to go ahead and glue them first, so that way I'm not having to chase them all over and try to recreate that arrangement before I add my little extra frames on. So anywho, um, we were talking about, yeah, we just have a lot of like upcoming changes, family wise, and like I really truly am so backed up on story time, and that's one of the things that I want to talk to you guys about, um, just because things are changing, for me and my regular everyday life, and not I mean, I'm not going anywhere. Don't be worried about that. We'll still be here doing YouTube. It's just gonna depend on what we're doing, and then also what we're doing in addition to the YouTube. Um, Here, just I'm gluing down my flowers, and then just enough glue to like pick up the other level. I find this to be, if I'm not going to use press and seal, this to kind of be the way to go, so that I don't have to constantly rearrange my dies. Somebody had left a comment on my video and was like, I think you're turning into a die cut person. And I do enjoy them more now that I have kind of found my comfort level with them. But I will tell you straight up, it still aggravates me to no end to have to chase the little the little bitty pieces around, which is why I didn't like them to begin with. That hasn't changed. I don't like chasing them around. I don't like the little fiddly bits. It's the same with like when I'm popping something up with foam tape, and there's like all these little teeny tiny pieces of foam tape that I have to adhere and pull the backer off. I don't like that either. I don't like that either. I guess we all got our things. Like everybody's got something that, even if they have the best job ever and they totally love it, you have one thing about it that you don't love. That's the thing about it that I don't love. So here I was very much feeling like that piece over there was busier than I wanted, which is why, I did not adhere everything down to that base. I kind of left them as free floating elements, so that I could test it out. I did not try it on like regular colored cardstock with the vellum overlay, but I do think that maybe would have been a good alternative as well. So if you're doing something like this, maybe try that. I think doing like a darker version of the pink, maybe like a dark plum color in the background, I think would have been really pretty, or like a dark hunter green. I think it would have created lots of contrast. Maybe I'll have to try that in the future, because I do think that would look very nice. But I'm also at heart like truly I love a clean and simple card. I love, love, love a clean and simple card. I am getting better about being more like clean and layered like you see today, but I love a lot of white space. It's true. I love a lot of white, period. Like just even in my wardrobe, like I just like it. It's nice and clean and bright, and it makes me happy. So now that I have those on there, here is the one on the right, which just has the white heat embossing. It's the same thing as the one on the left, just minus any color. And then I'm going to add my sentiment here in the center, in that same kind of pink color. And then, like I said, I'll show you kind of like the one on the left. And here this is. And then the one on the right, the one on the left just felt like a little bit busier to me. And like those, the no line look of the florals was just not as prevalent to me. And that's really what I wanted to be eye-catching. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere it down just by the frame, because again, I don't want to put any adhesive on that vellum where you would be able to see it. If you did not want to stack the frames, you could do foam tape. You would just have to put them on that thin little edge, but you could put more behind the flowers. That would still work as well. So in order to finish it off, I am adding some shimmer, just some clear shimmer to the florals, because I like a lot of shine. I do. Nothing's changed there. So then the other thing is, speaking of shine, we're going to add some rhinestones to help kind of connect that diagonal and really accent the sentiment. And this is, I think it's the Glacier. I've used these a lot. I've used them a lot. It's the Glacier Jewels from Pink Fresh, and they are a little bit iridescent, which makes them so pretty. And then that was the last thing that I did to complete the card. So please check back later this week. I will definitely have a story time video, and please hop over to the blog for your chance to win. Thank you guys so much for spending your time with me. I always appreciate you, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.